I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Rodrigo Lozano here today in Prague. He's already been here since Friday, having quite an intensive program of workshops for students on academic writing as well as journal editors, which is today's focus. He's an associate editor of the Journal of Cleaning Production, which you can see here. There are some examples. I'm sure he'll tell you more about that himself. So welcome everyone, and I think I'll leave the floor.
Let's break the ice a little bit, and because I don't know who's who, let's start with Professor Glavic, please. If you can introduce yourself in a very short time so that we can all get to know exactly what we do, who we are, and things like that.
Okay, thank you. So, my name is Biljana Prezlova. I'm an associate professor in ecology and environmental protection at the University of Forest in Sofia, Bulgaria. And I'm teaching biodiversity protection, protected areas, and sustainable tourism. And I'm attending the meeting of the project on educators for sustainable.
My name is Petar Glavic. I'm at the University of Maribor, Slovenia, where I am a professor in chemical engineering and sustainable development. And I'm also attending the project meeting.
My name is Elena Dimitrova. I come from Sofia, University of Architecture, Civil Engineering and Geodesy. I'm teaching, I'm an architect, but I'm teaching at a new program of urbanism. I teach sustainability, I teach urban theory, European planning systems, and contemporary urban policies for sustainable development. And, well, I'm involved in some research as well. I'm interested in the local level, and I want to learn more about the rules of publishing in academic journals. And that's it. I'm also a participant in the project of University Educators for Sustainable Development.
Please.
I'm Katarzyna Wojtyła, and I'm an editor in Karolina Press here in Charles University.
I'm Jan Havlicek, and I'm also editor of academic journals of Charles University in Prague in Karolina Press.
My name is Mika Bot, and I'm the colleague of my colleagues.
Again, my name is Nina Kapitulchinova, Charles University Environment Center, and I'm the English editor of Journal Envigomika, which is being published by our center with Jana Dlouhá as the editor-in-chief. And I forgot to say one important thing. Please sign up our prezenční listina at the beginning if you haven't done so yet, please.
My name is Vít Bělímek. I'm associate professor at Faculty of Science at Charles University in the Department of Physical Geography. And besides this, I work as an editor-in-chief for our geographical journal, University Geographical Journal, Acta Universitatis Carolina.
Eva Štefanová. I'm from Charles University too, Department of Applied Informatics and Cartography, and I'm a technical editor of Acta Universitatis Geographica.
My name is Jaromír Vyseček. I'm from the first Faculty of Medicine at Charles University, and I have focused in physiology.
I'm Neil Prakaneta, Doctor of Medicine. I'm working with Cornelia in some project of beliefs, feelings, and programs of our consciousness.
My name is Cornelia Munoz. I'm working at the University of Rijeka, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, as assistant professor at the Department of Education. And I'm teaching many subjects, but I think maybe most related to the project and working with colleagues is human rights education and education for democratic citizenship.
My name is Michael. I'm from the Faculty of Mathematics and Physics, the Department of Language Education. learning English. I'm an English editor and I specialize in corpus linguistics. I'm Karolin Press also. I should perhaps explain that thanks to the invitation of Editorial journal, where we consider future cooperation, and we would be most interested to hear something about the technical side of editing, or also something about transformation in the traditional journal publishing and the current journal publishing.
In a few minutes, yeah.
I'm doing what I'm from Editorial of Education, Charles University, and I am executive editor of the journal Scholar, which is education one issue a year is in relation to issues around chapters.
Okay, I shall also introduce myself. I am Jana Dlouhá. I have, together with my colleagues, planned for this workshop so that there are two groups meeting together, people from East European countries, which were here in the morning for the project meeting, and editors for journals of Charles University, which are coming just now. So I hope to have a real productive meeting today.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for coming. It's good to see all the different editors of so many different journals and disciplines together. And I can assure you, we all face the same problem. How many papers do we get per year? How do we review all of those things? I'm going to talk about my new role as associate editor of the Journal of Theatre and Production, which has been my career here has been first as an author, then as a reviewer, then as a special volume editor, special volume editor, then a subject editor, now as associate editor, and it keeps on going, increasing and increasing. First questions. When did we start publishing? How did we publish? And why did we publish? Have you ever asked yourselves those questions as editors? Any ideas? By the way, I don't want this to be a one-way presentation, okay? Prefer it if we can do it a two-way, three-way, 20-way. Any ideas?
Egypt.
Egypt. How many years ago?
4,000 or 5,000.
Oh, a few thousand years before that, in the French caves and then all the different caves. Why did we publish? Because we want to communicate something.
Yeah, but it's painting, you know. Painting.
Yes, but by the way, that was not peer reviewed. It was a little bit difficult to chop the rocks and send it to your colleagues in Spain and say, oh, please peer review my paintings. Abbas and Georgi, I think it was Hungarian, you know, how to find out the god name, he had to be Hungarian. He said that discovery consists in looking at the same thing from a different perspective, a new way of looking at things. Yeah, and I think we might need to get rid of this kind. Just keeps on popping. Later on. I'm talking on behalf of Elsevier, which is a little bit of a competitor to your publishing house. We're receiving 3 million articles per year, 1.5 being published. We have 30 million readers, 2 billion digital downloads, and 30 million article citations. A lot of papers a year. And these are the submissions to Elsevier, I think 2012. You can see China is on the rise, The US, Iran is also growing. Europe is also a large part. The UK has been important. Now we're talking about quantity, we're not talking about quality. Quality is slightly different, and then that depends on which subject we are talking about. I'll be more than willing to make this presentation available to you, or give it to Jana and she can send it to you. These are the ones from Elsevier, the increase. China has been increasing a lot, the US, the Czech Republic doesn't really appear with that yet. These are the articles accepted. From the US it has decreased a little bit, and from China it's increased a little bit. But if you check the ones submitted by China and the ones accepted by China, there's still a big difference. In the Journal of Film Production we've seen a huge rise in Chinese papers. The quality has not, average quality has not improved because we're getting more papers, but we're getting some really good papers and some really bad papers. We're getting more and more. That's a particular case of the Journal of Film Production. China, we're seeing the rise. Spain is very important. Brazil, the US. I should say that the Journal of Film Production, I don't know how many of you have consulted this one, downloaded any papers from that one? No? It's one of the most transdisciplinary journals on sustainability. If you've never had the chance, please have a look at it. I'll pass them around in a little bit. Again, the same comparison, but just for the journal. China going up, Brazil going up, Spain has gone down a little bit. But as you can see, there are lots of papers that we're getting. A few years ago, let me think, that was 3 years ago, we received 500 manuscripts. Then we received, next year, 1,100 manuscripts. Last year we got 2,136 manuscripts. Today, the last paper I edited was number 355. And we're in the middle of February. So we're getting a lot of papers. Also, our impact factor has gone from 1.2 to 1.7 to 2.2 to 2.7 to 3.4 almost. So hoping this year will go up again. So what is it that publishers do? And the people from the Karolinska Publisher can tell me what you do. You register, you certify, you disseminate, and you preserve the information that is being done. I was lucky to go to the Elsevier offices in Amsterdam a few months ago, and you can see all the amazing books that they have, the very ancient 300, 400 year books. It's really nice. Of course, we don't get that quality anymore, but more people are reading. That was established by the Royal Society of the Netherlands many, many years ago, still valid today. Of course, the means are different. We don't have the Gutenberg press anymore. We have the internet press now. For those of you who don't know, everybody's familiar with this cycle? Yeah? We solicit and manage submissions. Some journals have to solicit from the authors. In the particular case of the Journal of Film Production, we don't really need to do that, except for special volumes. Manage a peer review, edit the paper, so go through these. We all know that peer review, we want to check the quality, we want to check the plagiarism, we want to check some other things. And we are moving more and more towards an electronic approach. In the Journal of Film Production, the first 2 papers I sent, you have to put them on a Word file, send them to the editor, and the editor will deal with them. 20 years ago, you had to type them on the typewriter, send them to the editor, hope the postman doesn't lose them, and you have to send 2 copies or 3 copies, because then they have to send them to the different authors, reviewers, and then the reviewers mark the comments, come back to the editor. That will take a long time. Now the peer review is extremely quick. Elsevier is forcing us to have peer reviews done in 21 days. It went from 1 month to 28 days to now 21 days. My reviewers have. We're asking the reviewers in the Journal of Film Production, we need minimum 3 reviewers. That means that I have to ask for 6 reviewers, because usually half of them decline to review. But if we have 2,000 manuscripts submitted, I have to invite over 12,000 reviewers a year. Of course, I'm counting very lightly. Some reviewers review 2 or 3, 10 papers. We edit those ones on the author submits the manuscript, the Elsevier pre-prints it, you get a paper accepted, then you send it back to the author with the proofs, the author checks that everything's right, and do the proofing, you get the corrected proof, then you put the logo, the pagination and all those things, and then you put it into a nice volume like this. Or like this, that Jana edited. But we're seeing the decline of these ones. How many of you, when you're doing research, go to the library and think of one of these? Nobody. Elsevier doesn't want to print these ones anymore. Nobody really wants to print these ones. They're very expensive, they take a long time.
Actually, I do go to the library because I do research in history of computer science.
Yes. But that's historical, yeah? But the publishers, they don't want to publish this. They're expensive. It takes a long time. But you can only do two-dimensional printing here. On the internet, you can put videos. You can put some type of Google Maps, and I will see later. Of course, you have to publish and disseminate. Some of the traditional print journals include stem cell, environmental management, the Journal of Clean Production, waste management, the Lancet, which is somewhere between a newsletter and a journal, resources conservation and recycling, and then we also have the new electronic journals like I always was confused. Vigo Vika. Yes. And some other ones that are only online based. Some of them are getting postcards and blogs. Has anybody of you who has a smartphone downloaded the Cyverse app? No? I have it here on my iPhone. You download it, it gives you news about the journals that you want, about the authors that you want, about the topics that you want on your iPhone. Tick, 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 you get it immediately. And then you can download the PDF, you can read the PDF on your phone. Of course, you have to archive and promote the use. They are trying to partner to have multiple ways of archiving and doing these things. For example, with the National Library of the Netherlands and organizations like that. You also have, for example, Google Books, and that has been doing something like that. So we're moving towards a more electronic way of doing things online and publishing. How do we improve the science and the health of our communities? How do publishers do it? By making access easy. Okay, most of the articles that are being done by publishers, especially, for example, Elsevier, they are research articles. They're being accessed. The access to those articles is 97% in North America, 94% in Europe. The lowest one is in Africa, 78%, but you can see there's a lot of possibilities of access. Elsevier is offering now to developing countries free access to most of the journals. They don't really have open access to everybody yet, but they are doing that for philanthropic reasons. Now we can question that. That's another point. You want to improve productivity? How much time do I spend reading and analyzing research articles within the last 5 years? There's been a significant difference from those 3. So people are reading more in that sense. Sometimes because we have better access. Also because the style is changing. Sorry. How many of you feel the pressure as authors from your university to publish? How many don't? How many of you feel that it now is worse than 5 years ago? Practically everybody. Universities are going down the line of assistant professor, 1 to 2 papers a year. Associate professor, 5 to 6. Professor, 25. Or more. Not single author, of course, but You don't do it, you don't get promoted. You don't get a professorship. You don't get paid. You get more classes. They're driving us crazy as authors, as reviewers, and as editors. There's been an expansion of scientific research. If you take, for example, the compound annual growth in the articles and the articles in thousands, Malaysia has been publishing a lot. I don't know the reason why, but we're getting a lot of papers from Malaysia in the Journal of Introduction. Iran, although they were sanctioned by the US government, don't know if have you heard about that? There was sanctioned by the US government that any editor who was based in the US or was American could not edit any paper from Iran that was from a government office. They could edit from universities, but not from anything else than university. That has changed because Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley put a lot of pressure and say, hey, we're talking about science. We're not talking about politics in that sense. Of course, science and politics can't separate them completely. We wish we could. I was talking about the information philanthropy. That's from Elsevier. Giving free access to the different journals, different articles to people in developing countries. You have the Bora, the Ore, Hinari. Elsevier partners with the UN and tries to give open access to all of these ones. Please interrupt me if I go too fast or if I don't speak clearly or if I'm too boring.
Maybe a little bit louder.
Where are we at? I think we're in a transition. In a transition that nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. Everybody wants to guess what's going to happen. We are more or less in the same time that television, CDs started going out and saying, hey, there's not going to be any more LPs. Has anybody listened to an LP recently? Has seen an LP? Yes. They didn't disappear. These ones, I can almost assure you, they're not going to disappear. They're just going to become extremely rare and very expensive. We are moving from this to that. I think it's Arabic, right? To more interactive articles, to places where you can put videos of your research, where you can have interactive formulas. You could even plug in numbers over there and see what happens. You can play with those things, you can move, you can add those videos, you can add drawings, which you couldn't do before. In the Journal of Film Production now we have what we call a graphical abstract. Before we didn't have it. The maximum we would reach was color figures. And that's still very expensive. Google Maps, interactive Google Maps. We are moving towards that. We are in Elsevier, they're transitioning from the EES, which was the old system, to the Cyverse, I think it's called. They call it something strange. We're also moving to a cluster of journals. Before, you used to read this one, or stem cell, or the chemical engineering journal, and that was it. You would send your paper to one journal, then get rejected, and then you had to send the same paper to another journal. Elsevier is now working on clusters. You send it to us, you will send it to the reviewers said, doesn't fit the scope of this journal, but it might fit the scope of, for example, resources conservation and recycling. We are moving towards passing it completely with reviews and everything to resources conservation and recycling and letting that editor handle that. Slowly moving towards that. I think it's still within Elsevier. I heard rumors that they wanted to do it within the different publishing houses. I don't know if that will work. Wait a few more years. We have peer-reviewed innovations in peer-reviewed. Again, those are really hot topics. Do we want an open peer review? Do we want everybody to contribute to that in some sort of a Wikipedia of the paper? Do we have an article spool? Do we have a reviewer's evaluation? We have some of those. sadly in the Journal of Film Production, we don't have the luxury of grading our reviewers, because we're getting so many papers that we cannot grade them. We used to do it. Right now, I can't do it. I'm receiving between 3 papers and sometimes even 20 papers a day. I can't grade all my reviewers. I keep on the top of my head who are my good reviewers, how long do they take, what are the critics on, but you can't do that. This is the new platform from Elsevier, eVice. Still not active yet. We've been working on that for the last 2 or 3 years. It takes a long time. The EES system, if you've ever sent a paper to Elsevier, wasn't designed for submitting papers. It was adapted and it doesn't work out perfectly fine. We've been promised that eVice is going to work really nice. Promises and promises, but we'll wait until we see. We can read papers now on our mobile phones, on our iPads, on our computers. You can download any paper right now. You can go to Mendeley. Anybody used Mendeley before? Yeah? Anyone? Mendeley, RevWorks, you can just download it and have your database on that. Martin, that's the science director that was mentioned above. Open access. Are any of your journals open access? I know Janus one is. The other ones? Yes. Why?
We don't generate much income anyway from sales, and we make articles available immediately to a large audience, and they get cited earlier.
The same reason. You don't ask your authors to pay for your article, right?
They don't pay.
No. That's been a hot topic again in Elsevier. In the whole publishing houses, they're saying, hey, but some publishers are asking the authors to pay between $200, $300, or $500 beforehand, without assuring that you're going to have your paper accepted. And sometimes the authors think, I paid, therefore my paper is going to be accepted. Some publishing houses, open access houses, have been really ethical. For example, the Journal of Sustainability, I think is MDP, a Swiss house. They're doing okay. But again, you as an author have to come up with 350 Swiss francs to pay for one paper. Okay? A little bit complicated. So again, that's been a hot topic of conversation. And then you have, for example, full open access journals, green open access journals, hybrid journals, for example, the Journal of Film Production, where if you've been given funding by the British Heart Foundation, the FWF, RCF, and sometimes the European Union, they tell you when they give you your funding. That's all the amount of money that they give you, and so many thousand euros are to be spent on open access. So what you do with that money is you pay Elsevier to have your paper or papers made open access in our journal. So we run under the traditional model, but some of our papers are open access. Kind of a hybrid model. And then you have the free archive from Elsevier. Those are all the versions that anybody can access. Okay. Those are the reasons that we publish. First of all, and that's where we keep on asking our authors to do our reviews to check for. If I get them the word, we want new and original research. We don't want research that has been done over and over and over again. But we all want that, right? We all want new research, new interesting research. We don't want the same thing again. We want to systematize the published results. We have different results, we want to make them into a system. More and more, we're getting integrated, holistic, comprehensive reviews. In the Journal of Film Production, a normal article will range between 6,000 and 8,000 words. A comprehensive review can go up to 12,000 words. I just recently checked one of Stefan Zoyek, which is going to appear in a few moments. It's a really good review. It tells you exactly what the method was, exactly what they counted, all the literature that they checked, everything. It's a really good review about how it works. They're being cited a lot, more than many of the other papers. Of course, publish or perish. We're all under Dutch pressure. You publish, you get the money, you publish, you run the new grant application, you get the money, you get 2 PhDs, they get the papers published, and so on and so forth. And that's what is happening right now. We're all competing against each other for funds. Even though we would like to collaborate, but you know, that's the nature of the beast. We want, again, something that you already know, originality, advances in the field, appropriate methods and conclusions. We were discussing in the previous session that in sustainability science we still fairly new science, we're still developing our methods. Unlike chemical engineering, that methods have been developed for a long time. Pick up the Paris Chemical Engineering Handbook. It says handbook. It's a brick about that size. So papers are very, very thin. We want our readers to be able to understand the papers. We don't want science to be so incomprehensible that nobody can read it. We want papers that meet ethical standards. A couple of German ministers have been sacked because they plagiarized their entire PhD thesis. And I've heard of other countries that have also been sacked. We don't want duplications. This year we've had 3 major cases of ethical problems in the Journal of Clinical Production. Double submission. Authors who added other authors without their permission. And things like that. We're getting a lot more. Of course, we're getting a lot more papers. Those things are going to appear. Something that is not scientific. Hey, if it's not scientific, publish it in the Prague Lancet or the Prague Daily. Something that is out of date. Keep on updating your papers. Badly and poorly written methods, and I discussed the methods a little bit. Maybe something that doesn't have sufficient data or doesn't provide the limitations of that data. Yes, we couldn't get any more data, but at least acknowledge why we couldn't get that data. In 60 to 80% of the papers in this one, which still has a little bit of a natural science orientation, that's the structure. And you start with a really good title, otherwise people don't read the paper. You come under a very, very long title, people go like, boring paper. Authors and their affiliation, correct one, a good written, well-written abstract in keywords, and then we have an introduction, literature review, methods, results or findings, whether they're qualitative or quantitative, discussion and conclusions. Sorry, I missed an S over there. Acknowledgements, supplementary material, references and supplementary material. We are now able to put large databases on Elsevier's crowds. So you add it as a supplement material. You can also add videos, you can add graphs that are too large to have a normal paper. Of course, that needs to be accurate. And each of those ones, as you are more than aware, has a particular function. Introduction provides you the background, literature review, what has been written about it, methods, what is it that we did and how we did it, limitations, what you found, how you link it to your literature review, and your conclusions. What's original and what's unique of this paper? What are the implications of this paper? I received so many papers in the journal, great introduction, great literature review, methods well explained, good result, good findings, good discussion, and the conclusions, 3 lines. This research did that. You're like, oh, why? You've done such a great research. What does it mean? Ask your authors, so what? You've done great research. Who did that? I promise I will give you a little bit of methodology. Hope I don't bore you too much with that. I keep on getting papers that says section 3, methodology. Practically none of the papers that we receive are philosophical papers. And when we talk about methodology in the strict sense, it's about the study of methods. Yeah? In the strict sense. Any philosophers around? No? Okay, so I'm not making any mistakes. If I'm making them, you won't notice this. On the strict sense, it's the study of methods. Again, it depends on which journal. Some journals want you to have methodology on that section. For us, we're making it more and more strict. So either methods, research methods, methodological approach, and things like that. Saunders, Lewin, and Thornhill propose a very nice graph to show, to illustratively show all the different epistemologies, ontologies, research design, approaches, how many methods, and data collection and data analysis. Most of the natural sciences are around there, where you develop your hypotheses and you go on and test them. Yeah? You are doing archival research, right? You are around there. Yeah. Depending on your topic, depending on how you deal with it. Okay? Epistemologies are about the study of knowledge, and ontologies, the studies of being. They're different. And they're not really lines. Yesterday I had a workshop in České Budějovice. They were asking the students, how do I choose what is what? I said, look, there's only one line. That one. The other ones, they're more like fans. Because you can do critical realism with a survey and a collection of case studies, or you can use pragmatism with actual research, so they're more flexible over there. That one is very rigid. We've been doing natural sciences for a long time. You propose your hypothesis, you test your hypothesis, you either disprove or prove your hypothesis. Not more than that. Yeah? But I wanted to show you this because I know that there's so many different types of approaches here. Always be aware that there are other paradigms. Here, usually on a normal volume, we get 30–40% of such papers. Yeah, let's see. The effect of treatment pressure on wool fiber in supercritical carbon dioxide fluid. Sounds pretty much like that, right? Now let's see more of this. Learning networks in higher education. Universities in search of making effective regional impacts. That's by Jana, by the way. That's not positivistic. That's somewhere over there or over there. You still have to read the paper so I can tell you exactly which paradigm they're using. We have, as I said there, different research strategies which provide you a framework for collecting and analyzing your data. Each has advantages, each has disadvantages. How many of you have used more than one research method in your papers? More than 2? More than 3? More than 4? Am I the only one? I've gone from positivism to realism. I've done t-testing, experiments, ANOVA testing, clustered analysis, content analysis, grounded theory, hermeneutics, so the whole gamut. Don't do it, you go a little bit mad. Of course, you want to relate that to your questions or hypotheses, so that you can generate valid, reliable, and credible conclusions. If you're using an experiment for pragmatism, you're not going to generate valid conclusions. I've had that in papers before. I'm doing an exploratory research and I'm doing a survey. That doesn't work. Exploratory research ends up somewhere around here. We'll talk about it in a little bit. According to Remini and his colleagues, That's where you start. First, pose a question, or an objective, or a hypothesis. At the end of the day, they're all the same thing. It's just how you write it. Do you have any propositions? And if so, which are the propositions? What's your unit of analysis? Is it this entire room? Is it the fleet that only bites the left ear of German shepherds? I'm just exaggerating a little bit. I don't know if fleets only bite the left one. Are there any logic? Is there any logic linking the data? And finally, how can I interpret my data? In natural sciences, that's not so complicated. In social sciences, it can become really complicated, really messy. Quantitative versus qualitative, a little bit of overstretching that. Quantitative has to be deductive, you test the theory. Qualitative, usually inductive. You want to develop your theory. Quantitative usually product. Usually it's in the natural sciences. Qualitative is usually within the interpretative. But of course you have all that grey area. Objectivism and constructionism in the ontological approach. Research questions. Yes, we need them. If we don't create our research questions, we cannot get to where we want. We need to develop them properly. But according to the type of question that you set, that's going to lead to your proper research design. It establishes whether you're doing a qualitative or a quantitative approach. I'll try to give you a break in about 10 minutes. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah.
Yes, otherwise people start, so we can have some coffee. If you ask the questions why and what, why is exploratory, what is explanatory. Yeah? They usually answer through qualitative research. If you ask how much, that's quantitative. That's when you want to test the theory. If you want to explore the theory, you use a why and a what. First, you check what there is, and then you check how much of that there is. Anybody you took analytical chemistry in high school or in university? Yes? What do you do first? Do you check what's in there, or do you check how much is it in there?
It depends.
It depends. Depends on your professor. If you don't know what is there, how can you know how much of it is in there? Yeah? Same applies for this. First ask what's there, and then ask how much. I've seen authors trying to ask how much without asking what's there. If somebody else has published something about it, then you can test their hypothesis. And then you can refute their hypothesis. If nobody has ever discussed that, hey, I was giving the example, hypothetical example, on how many purple turtles are there in the Galapagos Island. I was in a workshop in Lisbon. The students were like, huh? First of all, are there any turtles in the Galapagos Island? Okay? Yes, there are still some. But are there any purple turtles in the Galapagos Island? Anybody? Are there any purple turtles anywhere in the world? I'm not seeing any unless you paint them. How can you ask how many purple turtles are there in the Galapagos Island if you don't know if there are any? They will help you, the research question or the problem, guide your literature review, check what's around, what data to collect, how to collect it, how to analyze it, how to write up the data and the analysis, and finally stop you from going somewhere else. Okay? Research is really interesting, especially if you like to read. But you open any Wikipedia page And it can take you from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other, and then you forgot where you start. That's where you have your research questions. They are extremely challenging. You have to make them clear. You have to make them broad enough, but specific enough. You have to make them reachable. You have to make them make sure they reach, they connect theory and research. Have to link one to the other. Do not put any assumptions there. There are lots of people who write assumptions there. We come back to the point of original and unique contribution to science. Has to be there. If somebody else has already written about that, your paper is simply not going to be published. Or we are not going to accept your paper as editors. And the reviewers are going to say, no, that's been written before. Glavich wrote about it in 2009. Lujan wrote about it in 2007. Why are you writing the same thing? Why are you reinventing the wheel? Avoid yes and no answers. Shall we have a break now? And then we're going to look at the research types? Yeah. Yes? Yes? No? Yes?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, okay. Is there a coffee available, Jana?
Yes. I think it will be available.
Let's have a look.
How long are you giving us?
10 minutes? Any questions so far? I see you sleeping over there. No? Not yet.
There's everything prepared. Take coffee, some.
Did you take the journal? One of the, I got one. You said I can take one.
Just take one. I think
This is the same, yeah?
Recaffeinated and revitalized. Okay, so these are some of the traditional research designs that we can find. Goes from experimental, case studies, surveys, action research. Action research. Anybody has done action research? No? That takes a little bit longer. You are an agent of change within the organization and you keep on changing those things. Case studies, a lot of us do case studies. Just be careful, because if you don't do them right, then the case studies get a bad name. And a lot of the case studies, people who are against case studies, they say, well, it's bad. No, it's because of sloppy researchers. You have grounded theory, which is both a research design and also a data analysis type. Archival research, and then comparative analysis of different units. Very traditional ones. Of course, there are many others. You have critical action research. You have a bunch of other ones. These are the traditional ones. I've collected a number of methodology books, trying to see how do I choose my methodology. Bryman, who was writing for business students, proposed 3 conditions. What type of research question am I posing? Is it a why, a what, or a how much, or a how? How much control do I have as a researcher? And that also impacts us as editors, because then you have to see the other side. If I have full control, then I can do a case study, or I can do action research. If you have no control, then you have to do all the types. Is it about today's problems, today's phenomena? Or is it about the past? Or are we comparing the past and the present? Then Yin, who is the guru of case studies, proposed 3 dimensions. Are there any causal connections? Sometimes there are, especially in the natural sciences. A leads to B. In the social sciences, A leads to B and B leads to A, and they're a little bit difficult to create those cause effects. Can I generalize the behavior from what I'm observing? And that's the same one as this one. So, ask me to be quiet. That's fine, not a problem. We also have all the types of limitations. What are the regulations of the particular university or the particular journal? What are the policies of that journal? Yeah. Are the editors supposed to be doing proofreading or not? How many of you do proofreading of your journals? Yes, I just got you over there. It's very tiring, and it is our policy not to do it, although sometimes we do it. What's the context of the research? How much money was there available for that particular research? If I go and study the purple turtles in the Galapagos, I might need to fly over there. I might need to stay there for 5 years to see if the green turtles ever turn purple. I need a lot of money. That's a table that I created for my particular PhD to help me decide which type of methods were the right one, the adequate ones for my particular question. Of course, I should have put the question so that you have a little bit of understanding. But just to give you an idea of how you can decide the methods. You can help the authors decide the methods too. A research method, as we've seen before, it's a way of collecting data and analyzing that data. Provide a framework within which you can move. Gives you the scope of that, the boundaries. They help collect data, either theoretical or empirical, and they can be general information or particular to your research. Not very complicated. As I said before, you have quantitative, how much, and the qualitative, what, why. And that we've already discussed about the paradigms, epistemologies, and ontologies, and which one falls in what. And sometimes you're all deductive, sometimes you're inductive, sometimes you're a little bit deductive, a little bit inductive, or vice versa. They are also given by, again, the research questions, the time, the skill of the researcher. I received a number of papers from prestigious universities in Europe, some of the oldest universities in Europe, where they are training the scholars extremely well in statistics, extremely well. But they are trying to do exploratory research with statistics. Different paradigms. It doesn't work. If you don't have the skill to do that particular research method, either forget about it or learn properly how to do that research method. I see too often people using the wrong research method under the wrong paradigm. I, as an editor, can tell them, you're using the wrong paradigm. You're using the wrong epistemology. Go and read the methodology books, please. If you're doing research in another country, make sure that you speak the language fluently. Check as editors or as reviewers, and you can ask them, hey, did you speak the language, the other language? As editors, we can do that. And if they don't do that, make sure that they do a double translation from the original language to the other language, and then by another person from that language back to the original one, and see if there is something that is lost in translation. I don't know how often you come across any papers like that in your journals that have a duality of language or can be moved from one language to the other, but it's a thing to consider. For those of you who are involved in sustainability research or any transdisciplinary research, we have some of these issues that are very, very hot. We have a lot of academic disciplines. You pick up the Journal of Clean Production, and I think they're passing around. About this one over here. Just look at the titles, look at the content, and you'll see the broad nature of sustainability. When we're talking about economic, environmental, social, and time dimensions and the interlinkages, including culture, history, literacy, environment, GDP, and all of those things, it gets complicated. Very complicated. That's the third point. It's valid for every research paper. How do you keep the balance between where to put the commas and the whole structure of the entire paper? I have colleagues who are so gifted on picking out all the little mistakes, all the T's that are not crossed, of course, they're crossed now by the computer. But I suffer from a disease called finger dyslexia. I type way too fast, and because I'm typing and not looking at the screen, sometimes I write T instead of N, or N instead of T. I don't think it's recognized by the medical journals yet. I can't pick it up because I'm thinking of the whole. I developed that skill. My colleagues are very good at the details, but when it comes to looking at the whole, they are challenged in that sense. So, find out who you are, and then you can work with people who are complementary to you. Of course, writing is linear. Check on your papers, the papers that you're receiving, that there's a proper, logical, linear flow in the paper. We all know that research is never linear, right? It's never linear, but the writing is. And the authors have to be able to translate that non-linearity of research to linearity of writing. And balancing the conventions, the traditions, with new research. And sometimes in the journals we are so stuck in our ways that we don't want to try new things. But those new things are the original and unique contributions. So they have another paradox. The data analysis, of course, is going to be dependent on your research design and your research method. We have hundreds of data analysis methods, from t-test to another, to grounded theory, to content theory, to hermeneutics, to observations, to blah blah blah. Make sure that the authors use the appropriate method, recognize the advantages, disadvantages, and limitations that we'll talk in a little bit. Some of these limitations include the operational ones. For example, limited access to interviews and all of those things. The authors have to acknowledge this. Validity: are the results of the finding valid? We have history, the threats, testing, instrumentation, mortality, maturation, ambiguity, causal ambiguity, value, causal effect. I don't see a lot of papers in the journal that fully address all these issues. I keep on asking all the authors to do it, to go back to the methodology books and read, and talk about your validity, your reliability, your generalizability. Hey, I only looked at a sample on schools, students in Slovenia. Can I generalize that to the whole of Europe? Can I generalize that to the whole of Slovenia? If I'm only looking at one primary school in Maribor, can I generalize the whole thing? Very seldom authors do that. They could put, these may be generalizable to blah blah blah. Maybe. There is a difference between maybe and it is. And you have the reliability questions. Subject error, subject bias, observer error, and observer bias. Even in the natural sciences, the observer might be biased. The observer might have made mistakes. We need to acknowledge that there might be a possibility of a mistake. We go back to this only. Don't forget that they have to be coherent. Make sure that your authors know about methodology books and that they follow the right paradigm, the right research design, research method, data collection, data analysis, and all, and that acknowledge the limitations of the paper. I did show you the traditional structure, right? For me, on the many papers I've read, many papers I've edited, in the introduction you provide your background. What's the problem? What's the overall context of this? You kind of set up the limits on that. Your literature review, you write what other people have written about that particular problem. You narrow it down a little bit more. On your methods, you narrow it even more. Yeah? Then you provide your results and findings. There's a big difference between results and findings, strictly speaking. Results are for quantitative and findings are for qualitative. You may have in the same heading results and findings. That is when you've done more quantitative and a little bit qualitative. If you've done more qualitative and a little quantitative, you can put findings and results. Yeah. Then you have the discussion. A good discussion will link your results or findings to the literature review. And you have three options, more or less. You concur, you agree what other people have said, you disagree or refute what they have said, or you complement what they have said, more or less. I keep on telling my authors, don't add new references in the discussion. Don't add them. Just make sure they are in the literature review so that you can link back to them. And in the conclusions, you link back to your introduction, to the broader context, and you specify what's original, what's unique of that paper, and what are the implications. If you follow those tests as an editor, it will make your life a lot easier. What's the background? What have other people written about it? What was done? How was it done? What are the limitations? Are they presenting the results correctly? Are they linking to the literature in the discussion? And finally, the question, so what? Sorry, there's a mistake there. It should be conclusions. Plural. Discussion singular, conclusions plural. Always in English. I know that some journals make the mistake of putting discussions after conclusions. In English, that is absolutely incorrect. Conclusions are the things that conclude, that finalize in English. You may discuss things in the conclusion, but that's not the point. Does anybody have any ethical issues? Tricky question. Has anybody ever faced ethical issues in your journals, in your submissions? Who has not faced any ethical issues? You know all about those things. You know about COPE? I think it's over there. I'll try to remember. There's an association of all the different publishers that sign up to COPE, which is something to do with ethical issues. I can't remember what the acronyms are. But they deal with they set up all the ethical issues for publishing. Some of the traditional ones, typical ones, multiple submissions, redundant publications, plagiarism, data fabrication and falsification, improper use of humans or animals, and improper author contribution. We'll go through some of these ones. Well, should be something else in there. I hope it appears, if not, I'll bring it up. Why do we need peer reviews? We all need we all use peer reviews, right? Which type of peer review did you use?
All kinds.
All kinds. Okay. You use 1, 2, 3, 4.
How many? We have like some stable team, and then we have a variability of contacts. Some of them are the one who cooperate with us for longer times.
And per paper, how many peer reviews?
2.
2.
We use 2.
2.
One person, 2.
2.
At least 2.
Yeah. 2. We use minimum 3. Minimum, sometimes 6. I submitted a paper and we got back 12 reviews for my paper. You're like, okay. they have different roles. They act as filters, they're experts in the field, so they can provide the quality assurance that we need. And we hope we will do. Sometimes the peer review, the reviewers complain to me, say, oh, but it's not we're not being acknowledged. I said, hold on a minute. Because I'm inviting you, I'm already acknowledging that you're an expert in the field. Yeah? It's a silent acknowledgement. Sometimes reviewers ask me for a letter saying, can you please write me a letter because the funding body in my country requires me to do that. We're more than happy to do that. More than happy. We need an amazing amount of reviewers in the Journal of Clinical Production, but we all do it, right? The reviewers have to check for originality. Is it original? Is it unique? Does it add to whatever we've written before? Does it meet the standard? Have the authors read the guidelines for authors? In many cases they don't. Is the research question an important one? Is it within the 25% of the best papers ever published? Is the article clearly laid out? Is the structure logical? Is there a logical flow? Are the introduction, the method, the results, all of those things clear? Are they appropriate and concise? I don't know what's the size of your papers. Anybody? 3,000? 4,000 words? 8,000 words? Anybody else? Yesterday I was talking to a colleague, Professor Grurbach. Yes? He said, oh, we're free. We just had a special volume where the whole volume, I don't know how many words, was one paper. One paper. Well, we're limited somehow to 6,000 to 8,000 words. The comprehensive review is 12,000 words. Some journals ask you for 3,000, 4,000. If the article is poorly written, it is not the reviewer's role to do it. And it's not the editor's role to do it. It's the author's responsibility to make sure that it is in the right and appropriate language. Whether it's English, Czech, Slovak, German, French, Slovenian, it is not our responsibility. It's our responsibility as reviewers and as editors to check that it passes, but not to correct it all the time. Does it build from previous one? Is there anything that has been omitted in the paper? And I'm putting the reviewing part there because we as editors are also fashion reviewers. When I get a paper in the journal, the very first thing that I do is I run it through cross-check, the authenticate software. Okay? If the number is too high, then I start getting worried, and then I might send it back to the author with a notice, say, hey, watch it, you're close to plagiarism. After that, I read the entire paper, skim read, become really good at quickly reading everything and picking up if there are commas missing or what's missing. And then I say, okay, these are things that need to be corrected before I send it to the reviewers. For example, no acronyms in the title, no acronyms in the abstract. Abstract in one paragraph. Those are the guidelines that we have in our journal, the Journal of Clinical Production. So checking those things. If it passes my first screening, then I send it to the reviewers. 21 days later or 2 months later, I get the answers from the reviewers. Before I read the answers of the reviewers, I check the paper again. I read it and I make my own comments. And then I check them against what the reviewers have said. So, you could say that in reality we have 4 reviews. The editor and the reviewers. Mine may be broader, mine might have to do with style, may have to do with some editorial things, sometimes with things that are missing. Yeah? I'm not as detailed as some of the reviewers, sometimes I am, but in general I keep a broader mind. Because I say, well, I trust my reviewers, they're doing a good job. Sometimes they're not so much aware of the structure of what we're asking. Sometimes they may not be aware of methodology versus methods. So I compliment with that. If they do it, fine, I just delete a couple of lines. That's why I'm bringing out the reviewing role. Most of us have these type of decisions, right? Accept. I've edited more than 200 papers in the Journal of Chemical Production, I've lost count. I've never seen an accept in the original version. Never. I've seen 2 papers with minor changes of extremely well-known professors. Over 200 papers. So that's 1%. Then it's more or less the same between major revisions and reject with a recommendation to resubmit. We pride ourselves of being a friendly job. We keep our quality high, but we want to help our authors learn, and our reviewers also learn. Jana can tell you, other people can tell you that we want to have good papers of good quality, and we know that not everybody has had the opportunity to attend a workshop or write properly or have the skills to do that. And then, of course, we have to reject our scope. Seldom we do that, very, very seldom. So, between the major and the reject, somewhere between 50-50. Give or take, depending on how you count. So sometimes to reject it comes back, when we ask for a reject with a resubmission, we ask the authors to put before the manuscript an answer to all the reviewers and the editor's points. What's the difference? That one, it's about 30 days for the author to revise. That one, 60 days. And if I, as an editor, consider that the work requires more than 60 days, of course, quality, methodology, results, and all those things, then I ask for a reject with a recommendation to resubmit. Sometimes it is because they haven't cited the right literature. So I add up all the different sections, all the different comments from the reviewers, and then I decide. It's not really me who decides, it's the reviewers who decide, and then I take a final decision. But we all do that, right? Do any of you do desk reject?
What? Desk?
Desk reject.
Before
the reviewers. Yes. We have a policy not to do it. We may send it back to the author, saying you need to work on this and this and this. We have a policy of not doing it. Some people tell us, but you're crazy, you give yourself a lot more work. I say, yes. That's the policy of the chief editor, that's the policy we're going to keep on. We have a number of, yes?
What about the external reviewers? They can complain they are sent a very bad paper.
Yes, they complain most of the lot of the times. That's why we have now the option of sending it back to the authors. If the paper is so bad, that you're like, well, you know, it's not going to pass the review, I don't reject it. I send it back to the authors and say, I'm giving you the opportunity to work on it, and these are the points that you have to work on. Many authors decide not to do it, many authors decide, yes, it's worth it.
And what they do once they revise, then you send the paper out to reviewers.
Sometimes. I had a case from a particular scholar, sent the paper, the reference system was wrong, the English was poor, the abstract was not written in one paragraph, there were a number of issues. I sent it back to the authors. A couple of weeks later, they sent exactly the same paper. I copy-pasted exactly the same comments. Sent it back to the authors. A couple of weeks later, sent back the same paper. Sent back, copy-paste. By the fourth one, I said, if you don't do these corrections, I'm going to reject it. That's not really a desk reject per se, but it's equivalent to a desk reject. Hey, I'm giving you all the opportunities you want that you can take. After 4 times, don't waste my time, please. We're all really busy people, right? Don't waste the time of the reviewers and of the editor. So we have those guidelines if you want to have a look at them for the authors, for online training and tutorials, and information for reviewers. And also we have a webpage on ethical issues, on those things that you might want to have a look at those. And as I said, I will make this presentation available through Jana. You can email her. Or I can email it to you with a link or whatever. We can sort that one out.
I will send it to
Well, Jeffrey. Any questions?
question about open peer review. It's something that
Yeah.
interests me very much.
Yeah, that's the long version of those things, and also for the ethical issues. Because the other PowerPoint is about 180 slides. We need a whole day for that. And I know that you're all very busy, so I'll make sure that that one is also available to all of you. That's the one that I use for authors. Open types of reviewers. You have the completely open, so that the author knows what the reviewers are and the reviewers know who the author are. You have the single blind. We operate on a single blind. The author doesn't know who the reviewers are. The reviewers know who the author are. And then you have the double blind. Many journals prefer the double blind, especially in disciplines that everybody knows who everybody else. But then again, you can read somebody's papers, you can immediately detect by the way they write whether it's Dr. Jones or Professor Putin or whatever. Not that he's professor, but yeah, there might be a Professor Putin somewhere in Russia. So that's some of the things that we have.
I thought it's something different. I thought that there is a possibility to carry on peer review so that many people contribute to the paper somehow. The paper is published in some open document and everybody can comment on it and so on.
That's the thing that is being tested. It's some sort of a wiki peer review type of thing.
Okay.
Wikipedia is based on that. Then if I get a paper that cites Wikipedia and you send it back and say, hey, that's not an academic reference, they're testing some things, different journals and different things. I don't think it will work because then people start saying, no, but that's wrong and that's wrong and that's wrong, and it doesn't really get anywhere. For me, when I act as a reviewer, and I'm in a good mood, if I'm in a bad mood, I try not to act as a reviewer, because then you can be really mean. What I want to do is I want to help the authors make a stronger paper. And I appreciate when I, as an author, get reviews that say, yes, but you could learn more from this and this and this, learn more. And if we all take that attitude as editors and as reviewers, our authors would really appreciate about the learning process. And we've gone through learning processes with authors, sometimes 4 or 5 reviews, and we've really tried to help them. Sometimes we don't really make it. Sometimes, not often. I've had 2 papers in that case, came to the 4th revision, I had to reject it. 4th revision, that was 1.5 years wasted on the author side, each author. They got really angry. I said, yes, but please read your paper through different eyes. The last version. I had a Skype call conversation with somebody from Australia in that case, and I said, look at that paragraph, does that lead to the next paragraph? He said, no. And to the next paragraph? I said, no. And to the next one? No. I said, what did you do there? Oh, I answered to all the reviewers' points and I added all the reviewers' comments. I said, yes, we ended up with Frankenstein. Yes. We can tell a reviewer, you're wrong as an author. You're wrong because such and such and such, because it's not within the scope of this paper, you didn't understand, and so on and so forth. But don't just take everything from all the reviewers and put it together. That's as authors. As editors, we have a duty of care of pointing out to which side it should be. But then again, maybe you have 2 reviewers who have contradictory opinions. I could say A, but maybe B was right. So you have to also leave it to the author to decide, okay, that or that. Or maybe they decide to go for A, and then later on they write a paper on B. We can't really force them on that sense. We can help them to learn and write better papers, but not force them.
I have a follow-up question to that. What do you do then when you have 2 reviewers? One of them says, yeah, it's good, maybe some minor additions. The other one says, that's really not good. Do you then, as an editor, communicate back when you, for example, decide, yes, this is a good enough paper? Do you actually talk to the reviewer who said it's not worth publishing to kind of keep the
not usually.
relationship, or?
What I do is, well, you know, with 3 it's easier than with 2.
Yeah.
It should be. Sometimes I get publish, minor amendments, do not publish. How do I decide? I invite somebody else. And when I invite somebody else, yes, it takes a little bit longer, but then I make the case stronger. Sometimes the other one says, do not publish. You're like, oh, I ended up with 2 published and 2 not published. And then you really have to read the paper and say, okay, which way should it go? Of course, I as an editor cannot just decide this way or that way. I have to base my decision on whatever the reviewers are saying. Because if it comes to the wash, the author can go to Elsevier and they can complain. And if I have all the documentation and say, oh, publish, publish, do not publish, do not publish, and then I've communicated with the author in that way and that way, then I cover my back. I learned that in the UK. Always have documentation of what you've been doing. And as editors, I've heard really scary stories of authors suing personally the editor and taking them to court, asking for money back because you didn't publish my paper and I lost the promotion and then I lost money and so on and so forth.
Are you insured?
No. But Elsevier promised me that under the code we are protected. But then again, depends on which country. In the Netherlands, there's not such a problem. In the US and the UK, that's a problem.
What's the role of non-reviewed material in your journals? There are just 2 pages of review in 140 pages. So do you think that there should be maybe more or less or none non-reviewed material, or do you think that's another service to community to publish reviews and
book reviews and things like that? Yes, it serves. We get maybe 1 book review per volume, sometimes none, sometimes 2. They are important because then you communicate in a different way. Recently we got one of a book review. I edited that one. You don't really check for references, but you check for English. You check that everything flows, that they're doing a proper critical review of the book, and they're pointing out to the positive and the negative. It takes me less than 20 minutes to do the check. It's only 1.5 pages. It's good because then you get a different communication. We also have letters to the editor that they are peer reviewed, sometimes by 3, sometimes by 1. What else do we have? We have educational initiatives that are also peer reviewed. They're a little bit shorter than normal papers, but we have different ones. They're important, yes, because the thing with books is that less and less people are reading books on that one, unless it's textbooks and then you force your students to read it. So if I don't hear about a book, how can I read it? And if I read a book review and I see, hey, the book review is good, it's giving me in 500, 1,000 words a summary of the book, I might go and buy it.
so you have no special policy on this. So sometimes we want to have so many in every issue.
No, it's open. No. What we try to do is having, for example, not having too many comprehensive reviews in one volume. It has happened that we have to put 2 or 3 for technical reasons. But we don't like it because then you lose the flow. So we want to have a big comprehensive review together with papers of the similar topic. But now it's also changing because Elsevier is forcing us to go into, how do they call it? I forgot how they call it. Before we had to wait until we had enough papers to compile a volume. Right now, as the papers are coming, they're being put in a volume. They're being published online. The year, volume, issue, and page number. As they're coming in, they're coming directly. So they're just filling in, and when that volume is ready, they print. The different style. We don't know how that's going to work.
Who decides on the collection of what goes into print? Are there selection processes
Well, the collection are all the ones that are peer reviewed and that are ready. Then for the last months, I've been selecting where would they go.
It's the editing of the publishing.
No, we were doing that, but with the new system, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But they say it's quicker for the authors are asking more speed and more, so, hey, I don't know.
You know, Elsevier is a big company, a lot of journals, as you have shown. Why they don't adopt the standards, like ISO standards for the writing? You know, one is the form and everything. The other is, for example, you have not mentioned the quantities and units. This is really, you know, something what we have to somehow come to a consensus, yeah? You know, not to spend so much time on different names and symbols.
We're academics. You have, for example, reference styles, you have more than 300. From Harvard to Numerated, to Nature, to Journal of Clinical Production, to APA, to MLA. We're not going to agree on that. I'm happy because then I can get my students doing one or the other or the other or the other, depending for what. In an engineering paper, I don't like to see author date because it just breaks the flow. Now, on a paper for social sciences, if I just see numbers, it just doesn't provide the right flow. That's on the referencing system. Now, we've been fighting against this new system of, as they come in, we get them published. That's one journal. The other journal say we want it. Yeah, but they're dealing with 50 papers a year, 500 papers. We're dealing with that. So each journal is a reflection of the character of the chief editor. Some chief editors want to have thousands with a comma, some have with thousands with a dot, some want to have American units, some want to have British units, some want to have metric units, some want to have Martian units. We're all humans. I have no other answer beyond that. Any other questions? Yes?
What is the procedure or what are the preconditions for a journal to get a contract with, for example, Xavier, that Xavier published paper? Journal.
I don't know, because I know the Journal of Clinical Production, when the chief editor started that one, he went 2 years trying to find a publishing house. Everybody told him, you're crazy, that's never going to be a good journal, it's never going to pick up. So he went from, he always keeps us the story, keeps telling the story, but I never remember it correctly. One editor, one journal, one publisher, and then that publisher got bought by another publisher, and then that publisher got bought by Elsevier. So in this particular case, it was buying or buying or buying. In other cases, a particular professor or associate professor proposes a new title with new aims and scope. Then that goes through a peer review process, same as a journal. Send it to 3, 4, or 5 different experts in the field who say, yes, we need that particular science, yes, and so on, and then they decide to launch it. I'm in the editorial board of a Latin American Journal of Sustainability, blah, 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 blah. They still haven't published anything. They started last year. They're not getting papers. It's getting tougher and tougher. In Elsevier, they say that if any journal passes after, it's still alive after 3 years, it's going to still be alive. They start a large number of journals and they die very quickly. They say that the editors lose the will to live sometimes. They said, oh, well, it's too much work, I have to chase after the papers, I have to chase after this, I have to chase after that, I have to chase after the reviewers, I don't have time to do it. Being an editor, and all my colleagues here can tell you, it's a really rewarding job, it's a really interesting job, but it's a very, very demanding job. And we're usually, and please contradict me if I say the wrong things, we're usually underpaid for the amount of work, right? Yes? Yeah. Yes. So I do it because I really love to read. I really love to help other people make the papers better and better. But some other people just hate it. I'm coordinating a special volume with 3 different streams. 2 of the coordinating or managing editors have told me, we like the experience, but we will not do it again. It's very demanding. I did answer your question, right? Yes. Yeah.
Could you please describe the technical infrastructure Elsevier as a publisher has ready for this editor? Like when you deal with so many submissions, so many peer reviews, sure it's not done solely through emails, there must be systems.
They have billions of dollars to start with. It's a company that has been established for 300 years. They managed to survive, they managed to pick up good journals. They have the EES system, I showed a little bit of that one, which is some sort of a database of the things, how they run. As I say, it's not perfect, they changed it to eVice. I haven't seen the version of eVice. We can communicate somehow through email, through the system. Sometimes I communicate through my university email, but they do have a platform there. Previously, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had to do everything via email. Now, most of the journals are changing to some sort of a platform. Wiley has done it, Springer has done it, Elsevier has done it. Some of them are very similar, some of them are a little bit better. Then again, each journal, each editor can decide what to ask from the authors of the reviews, at least on the Elsevier one.
May I have a comment on this question? Because I have tried this editorial system as invited editor of the Elsevier, and on the other hand, I have also our own editorial system within Envigogika, yes. And the former one is, of course, EES, which has been somehow bought somewhere or something like this. That, and the other one is Open Journal System, which is available for free. It has been produced by Canadian government or supported by Canadian government, and I must say that there is not so big difference between these systems. They have many similar options. Maybe this Elsevier will be upgraded now, but it was not at all perfect at that time when I was editing the journal, because, for example, what didn't work at all was there were some databases of reviewers, and I tried to invite reviewers through these databases, and it simply didn't work. They never answered me, so I had to have my own reviewers and so on. And so the systems are technically more or less.
I get access to all of the Elsevier's databases to invite reviewers. Can also include authors who are not set up as reviewers. But somebody has to clean those databases frequently.
Yeah.
And that frequently may mean once a year, sometimes once every 2 years. Sometimes we simply don't have the time to ask the person who's coordinating everything in India to clear it. Because you have to do tests of, is the email still valid? How can you name that the email is still valid? You have to do a ping, and I don't know how they do it over there. And you have to clear it. I can clear those ones who I invite the reviewer, and then I get a message back and say, hey, it's bounced back. Then I can email it to the person in India and say, please delete him or her from the database. That's one. We're talking about thousands of reviewers, authors.
Another question. How much feedback do you get from Elsevier about your journal's usage, like from libraries, from...
We can get a lot of feedback from them if we want to. There are some numbers over there. Let's see if I can get them. Here you have another question?
Yes. Do you check the authors?
In which sense?
In the sense that we had a case that one journal in the field of medicine in Croatia, it was among many other journals in the world, that got like cancellation or they didn't want to allow them to publish anymore because they wanted to check the quality of their was a man who thought that he was working at that and that university in that and that field, and he submitted a paper. And at the end, only few journals checked the author, and the case was that he was not employed at that university. He was just sent by an institution to check how good their review process is.
We are getting more picky on that sense, especially from China, where we get some emails that you're like, well, you know, it's 123.com. Hey, that's not a really university address. We've been warned by the guy who manages a lot of journals. Be careful when they just put a name and no affiliation, and the email doesn't seem to be from the university. So we're keeping an eye always onto that, especially from countries like China, Iran, and places like that, that you're like, okay, it might be a little bit dodgy. Of course, it can be dodgy from anywhere, but hey, we do have to check. So, don't know if you've ever seen that one. That's the Journal of Clinical Production web page. You have the most downloaded articles that gets updated often, I think every 6 months. And we have the metrics here. That's a brand new function where you have the impact factor in different measures. The SNP, the impact factor, the 5-year impact factor, SJR, article influence. So all of that is there. Of course, we as editors get a yearly feedback from the manager. That's part year B. On all the subject editors, all the articles that have been rejected, so it's very detailed. But only the chief editor and I get to see that one. Downloads of each article, downloads of from which country, so all of that. We can also check for the authors there, I think. Overview of authors, that's where do they come from. So that's the graph that I showed you previously. They're including more and more metrics on Elsevier. I remember they're a very wealthy company. Extremely wealthy. I think the CEO got a bonus of more than $5 million last year. Not that we're happy because we're all doing the work for them, but that's the, I think the influence of combinations is around somewhere. I just kidding. Now, for example, for my position, the associate editor position, I started in January, but I signed a contract just a couple of weeks ago because we were negotiating. I was going to say fighting, but it wasn't. Yes, and it's always, though they want to give you a couple of $100 euros, and we say, well, a couple of $100 doesn't buy me anything, doesn't pay any of my time. And I'm working on weekends, I'm working at night, I'm working when I wake up. Doesn't buy me my time. And as an associate editor, I'm expected to edit more than 500 papers a year. You just count how many papers a week is that?
€1 per paper.
Yeah.
Or maybe 2.
Why not 100? Yeah. So you have to negotiate with them, and you have to tell them, well, I have to teach, I have to do research, I have to do that, and then you tell them, if you don't pay me that, I can't do it.
So no rules.
Or what, negotiation? Of course not.
No, I mean the Elsevier could have a rule.
They do
depending on the number of articles, the impact factor,
they
whatever
do
you want.
They do have unwritten rules. And they're very clever because they are a Dutch British company, and whenever it's appropriate they use the Dutch part, and whenever they need it they use the British side. Yes. Any other questions, comments? Have you all had a look? Yeah.
Regarding the impact factor of the alternatives which is now produced by Scottish, some journals lean
is that finished now?
sometimes the other side gently to cite the same journal in the last 2 years to increase the impact factor. What do you think about that practice?
I think it's rotten, and I think it goes against transdisciplinarity. On the other side, the higher the impact factor, the more papers you get submitted, the more quality you get. So that's why we have all the different metrics. Because the age factor I disagree with. That's almost being incestuous. You cite the own papers on their own journal. Hey, but there's science being written somewhere else. So please go on cite it. That's the impact factor, that one, which is the age factor. You can see 3 point something. But I did an analysis of this one plus a bunch of other ones for the journal, and I sent it to the chief editor. Then you have the 5-year impact factor, which is the same one for over 5 years. Then you have the eigen factor, which is an alternative one. As you can see, it's been increasing. Then you have the SNP and the SJR 2008. So that's why you really need to use different alternatives to try to come up with the same metrics. That's again another one of the ones. As I said, I disagree with the way that the age index is being used. It's just one of the many different metrics, it's a metric. Don't stretch it more than that. Again, as authors, as PhD students, we're being asked by our universities to publish on higher impact factor journals. How do they measure it? Age index. What about all the new open access journals? That's why they're not picking up, because everybody else is being pushed to the big old journal. And the small ones they don't pick up.
Is there in the Netherlands an official government policy about publishing in English?
No, not in the Netherlands. Not as a governmental thing. Again, depends. See, you're making me. It depends on your research, what you research on, and is your research local, regional, within which context. Some of the research in Central Europe, I would expect it to be in Czech, German, Hungarian, not so much in English. There are a number of sustainability-oriented journals, for example, Gaia, that is 50-60% German, and the rest English. If you want to have an international impact, English. Not even French, not German. German that was prior to the First World War. One of the best scientists back then were German, writing in German. Right now it's English, lingua franca.
How much do you as a journal help your authors with English, with like the various editing processes?
Me? Practically none. I tell them, work with a native English science editor. That's 98% of the time. Now, if they're just on the last meters of getting it done, but you just feel that no, they can't do it anymore, then I would say delete that, correct that, or delete that, correct that. Not more than one page. I don't have the time to do that. And we have a number of services, paid services, or friends who should do that. It's not my responsibility.
But you work with a pool of editors, or proofreaders, or translators, or...
Yeah, instead I tell the authors there are many services, choose one and use it. Sometimes they do a really good job, sometimes they don't do a good job. I would suggest the authors to get one that gives you a guarantee. Or some don't give you a guarantee. You pay 300 euros, and the next time it comes back and says, work with an English native science editor. You have to pay another 300 euros. Some tell you, you pay the 300 euros, and until it is accepted, we will check it. If it comes back saying you have to work in English, check it again and again and again and again.
But you don't have any lector at the Elsevier which would check the paper after submission from your side?
I check it, Don checks it, and we're still not happy, we send it back. There are some services in Elsevier, they have paid services, of course, 150, something like that, euros per document. Some charge it per word, some charge it per document. I particularly, I'm very lucky, I have a very good friend who's a philosopher, scientist, and everything else, native English speaker. So I send it to him, and then I buy him a couple of beers, and he's happy. Or I go to Slovenia, bring him a nice bottle of Kaube, and he's more than happy.
Can you get his email address, please?
Yes, I could, just that I don't want to overload. If any of you really want it, contact me via email and we can do it. Because otherwise you'll end up with so many things. He is very, very picky. He wants to be very good at doing what he does. And he does take his time. So if you send him something for tomorrow, he won't do it. He needs at least a couple of weeks because he tries to understand what's written, and then rewrite it, and then understand what the language of the author is.
Yeah, you know, this is a market as everything, so you have some sort of approaching the optimum. Yeah?
Yeah.
This is the language, this is also the style. Of course, this is dependent on the field also, yeah? But within one field there is a convergence.
Yes.
And so is the you know, the nomenclature and everything else.
And
so what is, as you mentioned, the references, yeah? There are several methods, but you are approaching one which is exact and short.
We use something.
So no mistakes, enough information, but not using 3 lines if 2 are enough.
That's writing in English, properly writing in English, but writing in any language. If you take any of the greatest writers, some of the Viennese writers prior to the 1930s, there was one, I forgot his name, not Stefan Zweig. He used to go to Grünsteidl in Vienna with his big document, and then he would start and cut it down in half. Said, I can say the same thing with half of the words. I think it was Stefan Zweig or one of his friends. If you can say the same thing with less words, say it. Okay? There are a number of rules of writing in English. I think in my computer I have some. I'll try to make them available for all of you. For example, in colloquial English, I can say to study the shape of the chair, I'm going to do that. So to do this and that. In academic English, you don't start with that. You don't start with to study. You start with the noun. You write the article, the noun, and then the verbs. That's in proper academic English. A lot of people do the other way around, to study so and so. Wrong. Now, a lot of people, especially non-native English speakers, like to use on the other hand. Guess what? We have 2 hands. We have to say on the one hand and on the other hand. Or better, don't use any hands and write more elegantly. There's a lot of things that I've been picking up, reading and reading and reading and reading. Things like methodology versus methods. I've made the same mistakes. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it is right, you can say the same thing with half the words, but the authors realize they can say the same thing with the double or triple of the same words, and they write instead of 1, 2 or 3 articles. So do you have this experience, and how do you try to avoid people minimizing the contribution to make more publications?
I haven't experienced that, but that's why we have the comprehensive reviews. Hey, put it on one thing. You might have more impact with one paper than with 2 of lesser quality. And of course, if you check the each index of each don't want the authors is to keep on recycling the same thing over and over and over again. So, a couple of last questions, or are we all ready for to say that's it?
That's really interesting.
Okay, well thanks a lot. I'll make sure the files are available for you.
Okay.
Any questions, do email me at the email.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and I will negotiate how best make the presentation available. Maybe we could put it on our website also, but maybe it's not. It's not